Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome back to my channel. I don't want to discuss how long it took me to get these fucking things on my face. I wasn't originally going to do a Valentine's case today because it's not Valentine's Day yet, but it's Valentine's Day week. And I can't find anything else that I really want to talk about right now. So we're going to do a Valentine's Day case today and then one again on Friday. 2 videos in a week here. This did not go to plan, if that's not obvious. My face is very red here because I've taken them off, putting them on again. Like, it's actually a lot harder than you think to put temporary tattoos on your face. Would not recommend. Today I'm going to be covering the Valentine's Day murder of Richard Schoeck. I don't think I have any trigger warnings for today, but content warning, as always, strong language. Valentine's Day 2010, 46-year-old Richard was on his way to Bolton Bridge Park, where he'd agreed earlier in the day to meet his wife in order to exchange Valentine's Day presents. His wife Stacey said he'd meet him there before they went off on a romantic getaway together, which they did quite often. Stacey got to the park around 9 p.m. and hysterically rang 911 reporting that Richard was dead. I haven't looked for the 911 call. 911? Yeah. I haven't looked for the phone call, but if I do have it, I will insert it for you, as always.
Please, I need help right now. He's been shot. He is dead. He was just run my head. I just run my bed. We were meeting here to do Valentine. As soon as I pulled into the park, I saw his truck. As soon as I pulled down, I could see him laying on the ground.
Poor Richard had actually been shot to death and his body was found next to his truck. Stacey was not immediately called in to be a suspect, and the police saw his death as pretty much completely random. Just wrong place at the wrong time kind of thing. They ruled out robbery as a motive as Richard's truck was still there. The keys were in the ignition, he had his wallet on him, and his truck alone was worth about $40,000. So if they were trying to rob him, that's the first thing they would have taken. Now, I said earlier they were meeting in a park. It's not what you'd really consider a park. It's more of a parking lot. It's more of just like a car park with... I'll show you a picture, but it's not a park. But it was rough. It was seen as kind of like a criminal hotspot, and Richard was actually the 5th person to be murdered there. The last murder was 6 years earlier in 2004, and this place was just a hotspot for drinking, drugs. There was no lighting and it was pretty much in an isolated area, which also made it the perfect place for people to dump bodies. So why on earth you'd want to meet there to exchange Valentine's Day gifts, I don't know. So Stacey, Richard's wife, was born on the 19th of August 1971, and Richard was actually her 4th husband. Her last marriage, she had 2 children with her husband, and Richard actually ended up adopting these 2 children. Her mother's name was Rena, and her father passed away when she was very young. Her family seemed to move around quite a lot during her childhood, but she was pretty and blonde, so I don't think she suffered that much from it. Stacey met her first husband when she was in high school, and they married shortly after graduating. And within just 2 years, Stacey had already filed for divorce. When she was 20, she married again, and not long after they tied the knot, Stacey fell pregnant. This was with her first son, DJ, but she filed for divorce again when DJ was just a toddler. After the marriage, Stacey decided she wanted to stay single for a while and just kind of work on herself, so she ended up going back to university. She ended up going to Jacksonville University and getting a degree in psychology and nursing in 1994. She met her 3rd husband in 1997, but this marriage only lasted 6 weeks. But she had fell pregnant with her 2nd son, Keith, who she gave birth to in 1998. She ended up moving to Atlanta not long after Keith was born. She managed to get a job as an administrator in the hospital, and this job was just kind of like a ladder for her. There were so many ways to progress throughout this hospital. In 2001, she thought she'd finally met the one. They got married and they ended up having her 3rd son, Kevin, and the family moved to Snowville? I don't know how that's said. She ended up getting a job at the Georgia Spine and Neurosurgery Unit. She was an office administrator there. Christ, I can't talk today. She separated from her 4th husband in 2005. Stacey ended up meeting Richard at the hospital that she worked at, and I believe Richard was a graphic designer and he was a little bit older than her. Richard was born July 25th, 1963, in New Jersey to Ed and Mary, his parents. He was 44 years old when he met 36-year-old Stacey. Richard was described as extremely talented, adventurous, and creative. He was kind and outgoing, and he was very conscious of other people's feelings. He really wanted to make sure other people were happy and that they felt included whenever he was around, which is just such a lovely trait to have. He loved helping his sons with Boy Scout adventures. He loved Stacey's children, and he was so good with them. He just had a passion for helping others, and he was just the perfect husband. Richard accepted Stacey's boys pretty much immediately, and he was very okay with the fact that she'd had not previous relationships, but quite a few other marriages. He was very non-judgmental, which is what I sound like right now, which I'm not trying to be. But he didn't let that put him off, which I think quite a few people would. Like, if I met someone and they'd been divorced 4 times, I'd be like, what's wrong with you? You do think that, though. I think even if you don't mean to think that and you're trying not to be judgmental, you just go, what's wrong with you? Stacey and Richard married early in 2007, and they actually just eloped, and then when they got home, they told everyone. But Richard was kind of known for being very spontaneous, so this was not a shock to most people. Richard ended up being a stay-at-home dad for the boys, which was just so lovely, and they loved him just as much as he loved them. Stacey also did do some caring for her elderly grandparents as well, just to chuck that in. So in 2010, or by 2010, Stacey had been having an affair with a man named Juan Reese, or Juan, I don't know how you say it. I think it's Juan. Juan was also married, so gross. And there was rumours floating around that this affair had just been going on for years. There was rumours that, obviously about the affair that had been going on for such a long time, and there was rumours, also nasty rumours, saying that Richard was just a placeholder until Juan had finally, I nearly said deleted his wife, that is not the, divorced his wife. Stacey seemed to shower this guy with gifts. She was kind of like a sugar mama. She paid for his truck, she paid for his cell phone, and she paid for loads of different romantic trips together, which is just, that's too much. Stacey owned several rental properties in kind of like the surrounding area, and one of those rental properties, Juan and his family rented from Stacey, which is just wrong on so many levels. I believe he also worked at the clinic that Stacey worked at. It's quite unclear whether Richard knew about this affair. Some sources say he did, some say he didn't. Some say he did and he just wanted to work on his marriage, which is understandable, but it's unclear. I can't say for definite whether he did or didn't. By May 2010, Stacey had finally come to the realisation that she did not want to be with Richard anymore. But she didn't want another divorce, because then that's, 4 or 5? There's quite a few divorces. So she didn't want another divorce. So she instead took out a $560,000 life insurance policy on Richard. Another reason for her doing what she's going to do, or what she's planning, is that Richard could have possibly tried to file for custody of the boys, as he was the sole caregiver. I can't see why they wouldn't have really given it to him. So that could have been a concern in her. That could have been a contributing factor as to why she did what she did. Early in January, Stacey had a lunch date with her friend Lenitra. It was at this meeting that she confided in her friend that she wanted to have Richard killed, which I always would love to imagine how I'd react if my friend said that. For justification for her saying this, she said that she thought Richard was molesting one of her boys. Lenitra thought her boyfriend Reggie might be willing to kill Richard, because, you know, you've just got like a hitman on speed dial. Oh, she does actually, because he actually did this work on the side. Like, I was actually joking, but no, he did do that on the side for extra cash. So Reggie texted Stacey a few days later and set up a meeting. Reggie Coleman was born on October 19th, 1973, and had spent most of his childhood in the foster care system. He was working as a personal trainer at the time of the murder, and his name was Mr. Results. Reggie did have a criminal record, but it was nothing violent, so he'd either just got away with being a hitman, or he hadn't done it before. In 1992, in Philadelphia, he was arrested for possession with intention to distribute a controlled substance. January 18th, 2010, Reggie and Stacey meet up and they start discussing killing Richard. She uses the same excuse again, not that she just doesn't want to be with him anymore and she wants to be with Juan, just that she thinks that Richard is molesting her boys and that's why she needs him dead. So they start making a plan, and Reggie suggests doing it somewhere kind of secluded, out the way, where not a lot of people are around, somewhere shady. And that is when Stacey suggests Bolton Bridge Park. The plan was that Stacey would tell Richard that they would meet in a Bolton Bridge Park in order to exchange Valentine's Day gifts, and that she wanted Reggie to kill Richard with a single bullet to the head because she didn't want him to suffer. Reggie would then stage the crime scene to make it look like a robbery gone wrong. When Richard was dead, Lenitra would text Stacey saying Happy Valentine's Day, and that would indicate to her that Richard was dead. Stacey told Reggie that she would give him $10,000 and her grandparents' Chevy, which was worth around $15,000. As Reggie was a convicted felon, he was not legally allowed to buy a gun or own a gun, so Stacey withdrew $600 to buy the gun for him, and she gave him strict instructions to dispose of the gun once he had killed Richard. January 23rd, 2010, Stacey, Reggie and Lenitra all went to Bolton Bridge Park in order to kind of do like a fucking dress rehearsal for the murder. Stacey then transfers nearly $9,000 to Lenitra for Reggie and says that he will get the rest on Valentine's Day or once the murder's been completed. Lenitra then told Stacey that Reggie would not go through with anything until he had the money, and Stacey sent the remaining balance on the 12th of February. On Valentine's Day, Stacey left work and ended up going to her grandparents' house. This was in order to take care of them before the night nurse came onto her shift. Richard met her at her grandparents' house and he was going to wait with her, but she said, no, I'll meet you at the park, which is fucking weird because you're with each other already. Then you're going to go to some really dodgy, shady park to exchange Valentine's Day gifts and then go off together. Like, why wouldn't you just meet them at the hotel? More questions should have been asked here because it's just weird. Like, it just doesn't make any sense, does it? She told Richard that she would leave as soon as the night nurse arrived, but actually she was sat there waiting for the Happy Valentine's Day text from Lenitra. Lenitra did end up calling Stacey to double check what colour Richard's truck was. And then about half an hour after this, she said, oh, by the way, I'm going to be a little bit late in tomorrow. A happy Valentine's Day. For confirmation for herself that Richard was actually dead, she did call his cell phone. And obviously he didn't answer, so when he didn't answer, she left her grandparents' house to go to Bolton Bridge Park. Around 9 p.m, she found Richard's body and also found that it didn't look like anything really went to plan. Reggie didn't end up staging the scene at all to make it look like a robbery gone wrong, and he also didn't shoot Richard once, he ended up shooting him 6 times. She made her fake hysterical 911 call, and the police arrived shortly after and, like I said, found Richard's body next to his truck. He had been shot 6 times, 3 times in the chest, twice in the face and once in the hand with a 9mm gun, which I'm British, I have absolutely no idea how big or small that is. I don't know what that is. It's just a gun. A gun's a gun, innit? Police theorised that Richard had possibly mistaken someone for someone he knew, so he'd got out of his car to go say hello to whoever he thought it was, and then this person had then started shooting at him, and it looks like Richard had tried to run back to his truck whilst this person still was shooting at him, and this person absolutely wanted to make sure that Richard was dead. Police found 3 distinct tyre track marks, and they were Stacey's car, Richard's car and the killer's car. And the killer's car is the car that Stacey gifted to Reggie, which is why Richard got out the car, because he recognised it as Stacey's grandparents' car. Stacey was of course taken to the police station straight away, but she was very cooperative and she gave her story as to what happened. She seemed to be going like breezing through the interview, and then at the end she just randomly, unprovoked, blurted out that she was having an affair with one, which I can see is a good thing because you want to get that out there before police find out themselves, because it looks shady as hell. But also there's just it looks fucking weird if you just blurt that out. Officers didn't really have much to say to this shocking announcement. They just kind of asked, do you think one would want to kill Richard? And Richard said no, and they were a bit like, why are you fucking bringing it up then? And that was the end of that. They did, however, investigate Quan straight away, so they picked him up from work that evening, or the next evening, to take him in for an interview. He insisted he had absolutely nothing to do with the murder, offered to do a polygraph test. It did, however, come back inconclusive, but they are just like, I would fail a polygraph test, even if I was telling the truth. If you took me in like a high pressure situation to do a polygraph test, I'd fail. My heart rate can't take it. That's why I'm a shit liar. I can't lie, because I get nervous. Quan insisted he was trying to get back together with his ex-wife and that Stacey was a means to an end, which is harsh. But he had a solid alibi, so he was quickly dropped as a suspect. It clearly was not him. The only real lead that police had at the moment was the tyre marks. The tyres that were on the car were Goodyear tyres, but a lot of cars have these, so that was little to no help, really. Police got a call from the IT man who worked in Stacey's company, the clinic, and he was clearing out junk email, and he noticed that her inbox was completely empty on Friday, Saturday and Sunday, which he was like, she never clears her inbox out, that's a bit sketchy. But the clinic actually kept backups of all the emails. So he went digging, put them all on a hard drive and gave them to the police. I had someone not do that to me, but I was having like a conversation on email with someone, and then one of the IT guys then sent it to my manager, and he was like, pulled me in, went absolutely mental at me. He was like, this is really unprofessional. What if you went for a job in IT? Blah, 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 like proper kicking off. And I was like, I was having this conversation with the manager of IT. I was like, I didn't know that one of the people who work in IT would see it and send it to you, thinking I'm being it. I was Google translating into like fucking Klingon. So I was just sending shit. That was bad enough. That pissed me off enough, let alone the IT guy dobbing you in for murder. Fuming. Anyway, I keep going off on mad tangents. So they had the emails, and in these emails were transfers for the £8,900 and then the £1,100, I can't do maths. And this was obviously transferred a few days before the murder. So this goes, alarm bells, red flag goes about. So police call Lenitra in and they go, what's all this about? What's all this money for? And I think she was renting a property from Stacey as well. So she says, this is for repairs to the property. So she just transferred me the money so I can get it repaired myself, which is a very good lie. People have been waiting to throw Stacey under this bus. They've been waiting for something to call in about Stacey, because now her cousin's ringing the police. So Stacey's cousin rang the police and goes, I don't know where my grandparents' car's gone. Like, this is weird. Like, what? Something's not right. Stacey said her grandparents had asked her to sell the car in order to pay for, like, medical expenses. And she told her cousin Connie that she had got about 14 grand for the car. But then she asked the grandparents said they'd never seen the money that they'd got from the car. So the police go to Lenitra's house and they obviously find said missing car. And shocker, the car has the tyres on it that the police are looking for. So they're starting to put the puzzle pieces together, but they still just don't have quite enough evidence to pull Stacey in. So they start thinking, well, I think the killer was in the car park before Richard got there. So they'd have just been kind of sat there waiting. What does someone do when they're bored and they're sat waiting? They go on their phone. They make some phone calls. So that's what they look at. They start going through phone records. Lenitra and Reggie had spoke on the phone around 8:40pm, and 8:40pm is the time that they think Richard died. It also matched when Stacey then called Richard's phone. With all this, and then the police just discovering the ginormous, it might be the biggest one I've ever heard of, life insurance policy that she'd taken out on Richard, everything was starting to just kind of slot into place perfectly. So Richard's funeral was held on the 20th of Feb, and because Richard was such a creative person, everyone wore really bright colours to the funeral, which I think is just beautiful. Richard's family said that Stacey played up to the role of the grieving wife to a T. She was really kind of not into it, but into it. Richard was cremated, and Stacey had planned to spread his ashes on a hot air balloon ride because that was one of his favourite pastimes, which is a very expensive hobby. Richard's family suspected Stacey pretty much from the off. Reggie was arrested first, then Lenitra, then Stacey. Lenitra claimed to just be an innocent bystander, that she didn't really have any involvement. Reggie denied everything, but Stacey admitted everything. However, she went back to the story that Richard was molesting the children, but she didn't want to go to the police about this or get a divorce. Police spoke to Stacey's children and they denied these allegations completely. They said that Richard would never do something like that. He never touched them. No, it's not true. June 10th, 2010, they are all indicted for malice murder, and Stacey and Reggie are actually up for the death penalty. Lenitra's trial began May 15th, 2012. She was offered a plea deal of 20 years if she would testify against the others. She declined this and insisted that she thought that Stacey was hiring Reggie for a carjacking. And Stacey testified at her trial in order to get herself out of the death penalty. Lenitra was found guilty on May 22nd and she was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. Reggie pled guilty and was sentenced to life without possibility of parole and an additional 5 years for firearm charges. I've done it again, ladies and gentlemen. Just says Stacey pled guilty. Google to the rescue. Okay, she was sentenced to life imprisonment in December of 2012, I'm assuming. But yeah, that is today's Valentine's Day case all done. I was going to film both today, but considering the state of my face, I'm not going to do both today, and we're going to try again with these temporary tattoos and hope I look better than I do right now. Right, I need a positive thought. I know exactly what my mum for her birthday got this little, it's like a crochet pug, and it's a positive pug. I have found a positive pineapple and I need it. I'm going to post a picture of it, but it's the most iconic thing, and it's just what I need to tell myself all the time. Like, it's just hilarious. It's fine, you're fine, everything's fine. I need to be told that 55 times a day in order to relax, and it's the best thing ever. So that is all from me today. I will be back with a case of Tina Notice on Valentine's Day. It is frustrating, so I will pre-warn you of that. But that's all from me. Make good choices. Be careful who you marry. There might be a reason she's been divorced 4 times. Don't meet up in sketchy places. Don't hire someone called Mr. Results, and don't get murdered. Love you, bye.
It all, nothing lasts forever.
First don't fuck your bitch.
You wanted me to stay, but I can't ignore the crazy visions of me and all that. It takes more to a girl like me.
Your bitch, you fat motherfucker.
West side, and you dance at the club, oh mama. I'm just having fun.
You claim to be a player, but I fucked your wife.
I be only fucking you.
Watch the wild guy.
I was good on my own, that's the way it was. Cause you've been cheating and telling me lies.
No sleep till
Forget what they say, they don't know about us now.
Your parents' feelings. You remember the class where I got you all to make rain?
Don't make dough.
I mean, it looks shit. What's the fucking word? He's been murdered there alone. What? Her mother ended up going to Jacksonville Nursery.